Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review is from 1965, and it's from Japan, and it's starring Tatsuya Nakadai. Not that this channel has turned into the Nakadai channel or anything, but it's Illusion of Blood. This is directed by Shiro Toyoda, who directed about 60 films in his 50-year career. The only other one I've seen is Portrait of Hell, strangely enough with Nakadai. This is a retelling of the famous, arguably the most famous ghost story in Japanese history. It's been told for over 200 years. That's the Yotsuya Kaiden story, which Nobu Nakagawa made in a film in 1959, which is 76 minutes, and that's kind of deemed as the definitive version. Takashi Miike's done a version as well, but we're talking about the 1965 version, which is 105 minutes compared with the 76 minute 1959 version. The biggest flaw of this film is its length. It doesn't really kick off until about 50 minutes in, which could have easily been 25 minutes in or 30 minutes in. So it's 105 minutes, it could have easily been 90. So it does kind of, it takes its time to get going, but once it does, from 50 minutes on, it just goes completely bananas. I haven't seen every single Nakadai film, obviously, but I would say this might be the most horrible person he's played. And his performance in this is almost like a dry run for Sword of Doom, which was 1966, so it was the year after. But he is a nasty piece of work, completely unrepentant, and in the end he does go full blown bats in his belfry. It's in colour, so again, once it kicks off, it does go fairly bloody, and there are genuinely creepy scenes, creepy imagery that do stick with you. So I would say kind of stick with it, even though, as I said, the first kind of 45 minutes could have been tighter. This film, they do seem to have went for more is more, but sometimes less is more. So it's not a very economical film, but it's Nakadai, so anytime we get to see Nakadai, it's a good time. So one of the other, not necessarily a flaw, but one of the other issues with the film is there's 4 female characters and all their names start with O, so sometimes it can get a little confusing when characters are talking about them. So Nakadai plays a character called Yemen, who is an unemployed samurai, so he's a Ronin. He's reduced to making umbrellas. We're introduced to him as he's about to sell his samurai sword, but he changes his mind when he hears that his wife's sister has had to go and work in a house of pleasure to make ends meet. So his wife, played by the wonderful Mariko Okada, who you'll have seen in lots of things from Ozu to The the Samurai trilogy with Toshiro Mifune. She plays his wife, Oiwa. Again, the pronunciations aren't going to be good. And her sister is Osode, played by Yunko Ikuchi. But Nakadai's character wants to go into the service of a lord, and he has his eyes on a prospective local guy who has pull, and if he marries his daughter, who's called Umi, he has a better chance of getting employ with a lord, but obviously he's already got a wife, and eventually he'll have a kid too. And you also have Omaki, played by Kiko Iwaji, who is in the employ of this kind of middleman, if you like, but she has bigger goals, and she kind of has her eyes set on Nakadai as well if he goes up the ladder, and she kind of feeds him kind of information that will help him in his quest to go up the ladder, essentially. So you get these 4 women, all beginning with the letter O, all kind of caught in this insane web spun by Nakadai. So I don't think it's a spoiler alert, considering it's the most famous ghost story in Japan, probably. But with the help of this middleman, Nakadai poisons his wife, which again leads to some of the creepiest scenes in the film, as his wife transforms while she's being poisoned, and then obviously she reappears later in the film to most of the characters involved. There's 2 other men in the film apart from the kind of middleman who's trying to get Nakadai up the ladder and in the employ of a lord. Nakadai's closest friend, I suppose, is Naosuke, who's a bit of a scumbag, a cheap crook who wants Osode for himself. That's Oiwa's sister, if you're counting at home, who obviously wants nothing to do with him, because her love interest ends up dead at some point, and she wants Nasuke to avenge him, and then maybe she'll give himself to him. But he's an absolute scumbag. But he's after a soda. And then we have Takuetsu, who is kind of, well, he kind of runs the umbrella making shop that Nakadai is employed in, and his wife and his baby live in. And he's kind of, he gets caught up in the plot and the goings on. So he's kind of, he's not a completely horrible person, but he does end up doing horrible things, because Nakadai will pretty much say, if you don't do them, I'll kill you as well. So we have all of this in the first half, and then once it gets to the 50-minute mark, when the wife is poisoned and passes on, of course Nakadai wants to present it as something else, that she's ran away, and then that opens him up to marry Umi. But then in their wedding night, Oiwa turns up, which is obviously somewhat of a shock to Nakadai's character, and then everything just goes to hell in a handbasket. Literally. There's fairly nasty deaths. and the body count just keeps climbing as Nakadai just goes more and more off the wall, and his madness unfortunately isn't the best thing to have when you've got a big sharp sword around. If you don't like rats, it's probably not the film for you. Rats make quite a few appearances. As I said, there's some really creepy visuals in the second half of the film, including like a hand coming out of a wash basket and grabbing a character, clothes coming to life, and just the look of the ghost of the wife's face is quite creepy. Again, because it's in colour, it's quite lurid, and again, I haven't seen the 1959 version, but I'm guessing the 1959 was probably a little bit eerie, a little bit more atmospheric, whereas Illusion of Blood is more just full on madness. There's not that much of an atmosphere, it's basically just once things kick off, everybody's fair game. And Nakadai is just top drawer, going completely off his rocker. Again, you can see it as a dry run for Sword of Doom, but it's just his ambition and his greed. So he just doesn't focus on his acts and what he's doing and the tragedies that he's sparking off, because he's just solely focused on getting back into the samurai game, rather than making umbrellas for the rest of his life. It's a flawed film. I'm not going to say it's an absolutely brilliant film. As I said, the first 45 minutes could have easily been 25 minutes. But once it gets going, it's a whole lot of fun. A lot of ways it is kind of blackly comic, whether it's meant to be or not. It is kind of, if you have gallows humour, you might actually laugh a bit. Not laughing at it, but just because it just gets so dark and so brutal, and the body count just keeps climbing. Perhaps it's a defence mechanism, but I did find myself chuckling at it at times. Yeah, not so great first half, but a second half that's absolutely wonderful. And Nakadai, if it wasn't Nakadai, perhaps, well, if it wasn't Nakadai, I probably wouldn't have bought it, but if it wasn't Nakadai, it might not have the same recommendations, but despite its flaws, I had a fantastic time with it, especially that second half, because it does go fully bonkers. So thanks very much for watching this random review of Illusion of Blood. As I said, I will be doing films that aren't starring Nakadai, but it just seems that I'm on a Nakadai trip at the moment. Please let me know if you've seen the 1959 film. I'll probably have to track that down, because as I said, that's supposed to be the definitive version, directed by Nakagawa, another filmmaker that I'm not that familiar with. Yeah, so thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, you can pick this up on eBay. This is actually an official DVD from Shadow Warrior is the label, and you should be able to pick it up on eBay. Again, I don't know whether there's a Blu-ray. There might be in Japan, but I certainly can't find one in the UK or the US, which is a shame, because we need more Nakadai, especially when he's in bonkers films like this. So thanks very much for watching. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.